Hey guys, welcome to another Tree of Savior video, and in this video I'm going to discuss a bit about the Pyromancer build, and I'm going to go over multiple areas such as the equipment that I'm using, the investment that I put into this build, and I am approaching this from a newbie's perspective, which I will recap in a bit. But that being said, before we get started, what you're seeing here is basically the Automatch portion of Challenge Mode Area 3. And with the new equipment set that I'm using, basically it's very entry level. You can actually get into this pretty quick as long as you get your dummy arc or quest arc rather to level 3. This is very easily accessible. That being said, before we begin, feel free to like, comment, or subscribe. That would show your appreciation and it tells me that you're interested in my content, and that encourages me to produce more content for players like you. So thank you all. Hey guys, how are you guys doing today? So today we're going to talk a bit about the Pyromancer. And I've been getting a lot of comments about how the Pyromancer works and why it's the best class for a new player. So to begin, I just want to say that I don't mainly play wizards, but this is for you guys that are curious on how to play wizards, and my approach is what I would approach from a perspective of a new player. And what I've gathered so far would hopefully help you guys understand what is considered essential and easier to obtain from a newbie or a new player perspective. So with that being said, let's start off with the most important aspect, and that is the episode 12.1 rewards. Now, this reward here is basically endgame equipment. The only problem with this, I would say, is because you need event-driven items that would apply vaivoral effects and allows you to put set enchants. If you want more description of how endgame icaring works, a link will be in the description below, which you can watch at your own time, and it would explain how to craft endgame equipment. But with that being said, I am not using this. I am using something similar from the cash shop, and that is the 10 and 11 trans and enhanced set. And this actually comes fully enhanced in trans along with the weapon itself. And the way it works is you have Vivora, which is a given, also given during events for the episode 12.1 rewards. And what I've gathered here is the Vivora Firebolt, the Vivora Coordination Trinket, and then I am using a Demon Overload set, which increases my damage overall. Now, I am using a Morimponia Triucus bracelet, and this is ideal for a magic DPS class. If you notice that the Triucus actually increases your int, con, and crit, which is ideal for a magic DPS. On the counter aspect of physical DPS, you're actually using Picus, which you can see in my other videos. Now I am actually leveling this character at the moment. It is level 454. It is using the Botanic Seal along with the Moonlight Sparrow, which puts my XP at 782% higher than usual. Ideally, you don't want to use the Arc Divine Retribution. I don't have the assets at the moment to invest into another Arc. If I did, it would most likely be what my buddy Yam is using. So Yam, what are you using? He is actually using Arc Storm. And this is the setup that I'm going for. I am going after my buddy's setup. And what he is using is exactly that, but he has a level 4 vaivoral Firebolt. And a level 4 provides a flame ground damage of, final damage of 100%, basically twice the damage. And he is using the Coordination Trinket along with some defensive Ichors and the Overload set. His Overload set is actually, holy shoot, it's at level 2. Interesting. Okay. And he is working on his Lucy, I believe. He has his Caroline. Now, I am not going all in on this character. I'm going to set it at exactly Moremponia level, because really, this character is going to be clearing endgame content. The goal of this character is simply challenge mode singularities and just clearing the content, and that's it. I'm not aiming for the #1 weekly boss rate, #1 on anything. Ideally, if you can actually do the total damage of 20,000, you're set. That's good enough already to talk about. In terms of cards, I am using the Abra Malane card, which increases my fire property damage by 30%, assuming you get everything to 10. I am using a Marnox card, which increases my minimum crit chance. I am applying some defense here and a bit of magical defense. And then you want to use the Lucia card. Lucia card actually gives 120 intelligence. Now, this is subjective. I like to use the Lucid Winter Spoon because of my cast time. It can take a while, especially with Meteor Storm. But ideally, you want to use Gazing Golem if you're going against bosses or you have trouble with sustainability, your defense. But again, like I said, with the episode 12-1 rewards, you'll get certain set items that would help you get the Balinta item effects, Legend Enchantment. So that goes a long way. And then the next step is actually working on your random Ichors. Now, keep in mind with the Savinose Desnai leather armor, you do not get to use Ichors that you can obtain from level 440 for dirty items, okay? You can only roll it on the item itself. So I had to roll a couple times, and ideally you want to get Int, Spirit, Con, and Crit. And this is ideal for a Magic TPS clearing challenge mode in Singularity. Why? Because it's not as hard as it used to be before episode 13. It's actually a lot easier now to do it, especially with the bonus party buffs. As you saw earlier, I did a solo challenge mode on my own using my Assisters. My Assisters is basically Moremponia, which provides additional magical crit damage, 2 blue cards, which gives a magic rate, increased damage level, dungeon, uphill defense, and then insect combination gives int, and a legend grade combination gives increased damage in raid zone. So this is just my combination. I'm sure there are other better combinations out there, and I just want to level Moremponia at the moment. That being said, let's shift gears over to what I have in terms of appearance. I have one item at the moment, and it has magical critical attack. I am missing 2 more other hair costumes, but ideally you want to get magic critical attack on these items. And where are my stats at the moment? The way it sits at, it is 34,000 magic attack. Let's see here, crit rate 5,000. Physical and magical defense are pretty much neck to neck. I am told that I should be aiming for accuracy, especially for clearing endgame content on my main weapon. My main weapon itself right now has a lot of defensive Ichors. So if you notice, I have the 2 blue lines, and that is attack against leather armor and attack against medium type target offsetting. This provides increased defense when an enemy is attacking me, and all characters are considered medium type, and I am wearing a leather armor, so that provides additional defense. So basically I'm getting damage mitigation from a 13.9% an additional 14.3%, and the coordination gives me additional damage against specific types of, mobs. If you're using the exclamation point here, it actually tells you how to reach endgame equipment. A lot of people don't notice this actually. This is actually a new feature. And I always tell people just click on the exclamation point when you press F2 and it'll tell you what you need to upgrade. So if you notice here, my staff is actually missing enchant jewels and awakening. So what is an enchant jewel? Basically an enchant jewel will allow you to have like increased main weapon damage, increased crit rate, and then the awakening is an additional line item. So let me go back to my buddy Yam and I will show you what I mean by this. So notice that he has the enchant jewel, which applies physical damage decreased by 20.4%. That is a jewel enchantment, and notice right above it is the awakening enchant, and it increases magic attack by 282. This is ideal. I noticed that I didn't talk about gems, but if you have gem abrasives that could get it to level 10, go for it. Get 3 of those and 3 of them on the trinket itself. It is not there yet for me, but that is something I'm working towards. If I'm talking about endgame, I'm gonna get a level 3 wizard seal. That is something I would get. Eventually an arc storm. Eventually. That being said, let's move on to the skills themselves. So skill investments are pretty simple. You want to get 5 in liturgy, 5 in magic shield, and 5 in teleportation. The others are not really necessary unless you're really trying to level, but the game is so easy for beginners at the first 400 levels. That is basically your biggest tutorial. And what you'll really be using as your main leveling skill is the next class up, and that is Elementalist. You want to get Electrocute at 15, and then put 1 point in Hail, because that will help you crowd control certain mobs by slowing them down. And then whatever points you have left, save it for later, because you're going to put it into Fireclaw. But before you invest anything into Fireclaw, you want to get 10 into Blizzard Storm, 10 into Meteor, and 5 into Elemental Burst. And the way I'm asking this is because all of these skills will help you level up, especially Electrocute and Blizzard Storm. Now you can rotate Elementalist and Pyro back and forth. A lot of people tend to go Pyromancer first, then Elementalist. It's ideal. It's entirely up to you, but I went with Elementalist first. So the way it works here is you want to get elemental resistance. If you have attribute points, your main skills is going to be Meteor, Fire Pillar, Hell Breath, Prominence. So those are your attributes that you want to focus on first. For now, just try to get at least 10 points or 50 points into what you have here, similar to my setup right now, and focusing on exactly what I have here. You don't want anything Lightning Orb. That is not our path of investment. This is actually a very low skill factor and is not recommended at the moment, especially in KTOS. Unless you want to do something outside of meta builds, go ahead, try it, let me know how it works out for you. Then you want to get the Elemental Amplify. Keep this at 1, and you can only get it at 1 anyway. This is a 40% damage increase buff corresponding to the property damage that is applied for 20 seconds. So whatever damage whatever element you're using, your damage is amplified. Then you want to get Hail Freeze, and what this does, it further freezes enemies, more crowd control. Blizzard Storm, same thing. You want to slow them down, so get the Blizzard Storm slow. For Meteor, I just went with Flame Ground. This applies hits additional 5 more enemies. And then the Elemental Burst. This has a high skill factor, and the way it works here is just a laser beam. This is actually recent. It wasn't this skill, it was something else previously to episode 13. Then you want to get Elemental Mastery, because we are going to be using a staff. We're not using a rod, but we're using a staff. And damage dealt with any element will increase the damage by every 3% per attribute level. And then you want to get the Blizzard Storm, Second Storm, and this increases the attack of the enemies in range and takes extra damage. Then we'll move on to Pyromancer. And within Pyromancer, you want to get Firewall. I kept Firewall at level 4. Notice that the skill factor doesn't really make much of a difference because the Firewall is just crowd control. It's just to push the enemies back, and that's pretty much all it is for you, is to give yourself that distance between you and the mob so you can have the ability to cast your spells. And then you want Enchant Fire. Now, Enchant Fire, a lot of players might not put a point in there, but I went with it only because when an enemy nearby is exploded by a fire property type, it can affect multiple enemies. So think of it as a corpse explosion in like Diablo 2, right? One explosion will impact the others, and skill factor is not too bad. It's 1,500 something. And with this, you want to get Enchant Fire, decrease fire property resistance. And what this does is it decreases the enemy's fire resistance. By doing this, all your other skills will benefit from it. Think about that for a second. You're a Pyromancer. You're decreasing the enemy's fire property resistance. I think it's a worthy investment. Flame Ground. All right. So basically what this does is a continuous AoE fire damage, basically a magic circle. And what it does is it inflicts diffusion. So must get this. So the heat debuff, again, decreases the enemy's fire property resistance, thereby increasing your fire damage. Fire Pillar, definitely get Fire Pillar. It summons a giant fire pillar and does tremendous damage over time. Hell Breath is a continuous flame coming out of your hands, and it applies another debuff. And enemies taking this debuff will take increased fire damage. So everything here so far that I've stated so far is basically Enchant Fire, Flame Ground, Hell Breath. They all decrease the enemy's fire resistance, and thereby also increasing your fire damage. So you see how the synergy works here, right? And then lastly, we have Prominence. And Prominence is basically an AoE fire circle that floats around you. So how does that work, right? You want to get Flame Jewel. This is, if there's any Mystic Tomes that you really want to invest in terms of arts, get this first, because this creates a red flame that will rotate around the caster for 30 seconds. This does so much damage and helps you level so fast. That being said, if you want to use Pyromancer first, go for it before Elementalist. So let's go do these investment attributes real quick right here, okay? So we have Staff Fire Mastery, and whenever you equip a staff, you increase fire damage. Get it. Hell Breath, it's at 50. If you don't have the attribute points, go for 10. It's fine. Take your time, level it up. I went with Fire Pillar Enhanced first. So as you notice, it's 100. That's the majority of my damage as well. Hell Breath Knockback. Again, you want to create that distance, right? So the Firewall also knocks back. And then lastly, you have Hell Breath, creating more distance between you and the enemy, okay? Enchant Fire, Prominence Enhance, Flame Jewel, Flame Ground Diffusion, Enchant Fire property, Fire property resistance, Flame Ground Enhance, and then let's see here, and that's pretty much it. Right. The other art that you want to get is the Firewall Crossfire, and without the Crossfire, you're just gonna have a straight line of Firewall. But with Crossfire, you're getting a cross down the center. For our last and final class is the Taoist, and within the Taoist, we have Creeping Death Charm. And this is basically a talisman, right? And it slowly moves towards the enemy, and eventually it damages the enemy over time. That's all it is to it. It's nothing special, but it does good damage. Basically, these skills are everything you do on cooldown. And what I mean by cooldown is just press it when it's ready. Okay, now Fire Charm. You throw a Fire Charm in target area and you summon Flame on the ground. Very important, because this is actually really good against flying type enemies if you invest into Updraft. Another thing is it attacks multiple times, up to 10 targets. So I don't see why you wouldn't get this. This is a great AoE skill. Next, you have Snow Tempest Charm. This basically installs a talisman which summons snow and wind. Again, what it does here is decreases the enemy's accuracy. Get the Fog attribute. Okay, this will help you dodge or evade the enemy, thereby increasing your ability to survive. Then we have Eradication. Basically, You summon a bunch of talismans that fly towards the enemy and do damage. The skill factor is 768 times 8. So if you think about that, that is actually a lot. 6k, I believe, or more. And then we have Strengthening Charm. What this does is it activates a talisman that amplifies your property damage. So again, this is a buff. You want to cast this prior to any form of skills. This is basically a buff. In terms of attribute investment, get the Try Disaster Charm. Basically, this enemy under Try Disaster will receive increased property damage. Again, this is a debuff on the enemy. More damage for you. And then pretty much everything is simple investments. 50, 10, again, up to whatever you have. I don't have enough attribute points, but if I did, I would probably get everything here up to 50, except the ones I did not invest into, and that is Flame Radiation and Divine Punishment. I am not getting those. If I was running Amnoji, perhaps maybe I would go for that, but I am not at the moment. So with that being said, let's go over the skills in action. So in terms of buff, you have Strength Charm, right? 30-minute buff. Then you have Magic Shield. You have Lethargy. And Lethargy, what it does is makes the enemy lethargic. All right, it decreases their physical attack. It decreases their magic attack. It decreases their invasion. There's actually a gem for this, so definitely get this if you ever get a chance to. Remember, gems are endgame min-maxing, as my friend likes to say. It's not a great investment unless you really want to consider pushing that little extra 2%, 5%. But then again, who are you competing with, right? You're not going weekly boss rate. You're just killing mobs to clear content in challenge mode and in singularities. Then you have Enchant Fire, another buff. So the first thing we're going to do is apply. So notice my skill rotation here, right? We have Flame Wall, and then we have Flame Ground, then we have Fire Pillar, and then we have Hell Breath. Now, why do I have it set up this way? Well, think about it this way, right? You have your attributes where it shows a Firewall increased fire property buff and Crossfire. And this knocks back the enemy. So you want to create a bit of distance between you and the enemy, right? And then you have Flame Ground. And Flame Ground applies a heat debuff. Okay, now this increases your damage against the enemy. By having that debuff, all right, you want to start casting your Fire Pillar. Cast your Fire Pillar, it will be running. Have your Hell Breath going, and this increases the damage they take from the Fire Pillar. And why do I say this? Is because Hell Breath, again, applies a debuff, thereby increasing your damage of fire property. Okay. And then moving forward, we have Prominence. Keep this on at all times. All right. This is what the attribute Enchant Jewel does. It creates a red flame that rotates around the caster. And this is exactly what it does. You could just walk around and things just die. And this is actually really good for leveling. If you are running Pyromancer first, go for it. All right, moving on. Now we have Meteor. Again, it's basically cast Meteor on cooldown. I have casting time reduction. Keep it going. It does tremendous damage. The other skill is a Fire Charm. Just throw it out there. It does massive damage. And then you have this skill, which shoots a bunch of talismans. It's basically eradication. Look at that. Come on, how can you not love that? Alright, so keep my Prominence on. Then we have some skills that actually slows down the enemy, right? We have Creeping Death, basically on cooldown. Just throw it out there. It slowly creeps towards the enemy. But you want Hail and Blizzard Storm, because that will slow down the enemy. Alright? So when you talk about crowd control, this is what it is. It's a fully chargeable skill, and then at full charge, you release it along with that. And you could throw in a snowstorm, snow tempest charm as well. And then we have that one skill that was completely changed and recent, and that is Elemental Burst. It's basically all the elements at once as a giant freaking laser. I mean, what's not to love here? Look at that. And then we have Electrocute, and that is part of the Elementalist class. Basically, it shoots out an electric bolt similar to Wizard in Diablo 2. You have your Chain Lightning, and that's exactly what it is. You shoot out a bolt of lightning, and it just travels everywhere and shocks everyone. Like all these AoE skills, what's not to love, right? And that's really pretty much it. You're just gonna rotate through all your skills and cooldown to try to keep your debuffs going for the enemy, and then just slowly burn them through everything, you know, like that's all it is to it. You're gonna clear content like it's cutting through butter. And they say Tree of Savior is not really a game of Wizards in the old days back in beta, but a lot has changed, and I would say the game is very heavily favored towards Wizards at the moment, and that probably won't change for a while now because of the visual appeal of playing as a Pyromancer. It's all there. That being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the rest of the video. It's mainly just a gameplay video of me doing solo challenge mode as a Pyromancer. And if you really like this video, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. That would actually show your appreciation to me, and it allows me to create more content for players like you. So thank you all.